Hi everyone, welcome to the Vue Rich Text Editor tutorial, where I'll demonstrate adding custom tools to the Rich Text Editor component. Look at this example. You can see the Rich Text Editor with a custom tool on the toolbar. By clicking the Omega command, the dialog opens and displays the special character lists. You can choose the characters you want to insert. Okay, let me show how to add custom tools to the toolbar using my pre-made Vue application. I open the application where I have already added the Vue Rich Text Editor with the toolbar settings property. If you want to know how to get started with the Vue Rich Text Editor component, refer to the video attached in the card above. I run this example using the npm run dev command to show you the initial demo. When you look at the editor, you can see the HTML content and the toolbar. I will show how to add a custom tool, an Omega symbol, as a toolbar item. To do that, I add a template inside the toolbar settings object and add a button with the ID, custom tool. Then, I set the class attribute and add the classes eToolbar button and eControl. To add the Omega symbol, I add a span tag with appropriate code for the Omega symbol and class attribute. Then, I add a tooltip saying insert symbol using the tooltip text property. Now, the Rich Text Editor toolbar displays the custom tool, Omega, and its tooltip when I hover over the tool. Next, I am going to show you how to add a dialog for when the Omega button is clicked. First, I need to install the pop-ups package using the command npm install at Syncfusion /ej2 vue popups -- save. I need to import the dialog component from the Syncfusion ej2 vue popups package and register it along with child directives. I add the Vue dialog component with the appropriate width. To set the header text, I define a variable header and set the appropriate value. Then I assign this variable to the header property of the dialog. Next, I define a variable showClose icon and set its value to true to close the dialog. As I said before, the dialog should open when the Omega button is clicked. So, I set the visible property to false to hide the dialog component initially. Now I am going to assign these variables to the respective properties of the dialog component. The next step is to write code to show the dialog when the toolbar item is clicked. Before that, I create an instance for the RTE component using the ref attribute to access it dynamically during the runtime. I define the click event for the Omega button with the appropriate event handler. Within the event handler, I define a variable proxy and assign the current instance. When I click the Omega button, I need to set focus to the RTE component, so let me invoke the focus method using the component instance. Finally, I invoke the show method to display the dialog. Now the dialog opens when the Omega button is clicked. Notice that I can interact with the editor and toolbar items when the dialog is visible. To disable this interaction, I define a variable modal and set its value to true. Then I assign this variable to the isModal property of the dialog component. Checking now, when the dialog is visible, I cannot interact with the Rich Text Editor as the overlay is created. Next, I will show you how to add special characters to this dialog. I am going to use template for adding special characters inside the dialog. I define a template with the vslot directive and name it as content template. I define a division element with the ID custom toolbar dialog, which acts as the outer layer of the dialog content. Within it, I add one more division element with the ID, RTE special character. And add the symbols using the appropriate title and symbol code. Here, I have added the class character block to the division elements to align the symbols inside the dialog. I then assign this template to the content property of the dialog. Within the style, I add the required CSS styles like display, padding, border, and so on. Inside the custom button click event handler, I define the object range using the getRange method to get the selected range from the RTE content. I store this selected range using the save method. Lastly, I open the dialog using the show method. When I click the Omega button, the dialog displays special characters. Next, I need to add an insert button to insert the selected symbol into the RTE. To do that, I define an array variable, dialog buttons, and the button model to set the button content to insert. And type as primary by enabling the isPrimary property. I assign this variable to the buttons property of the dialog component. You can see the dialog renders with the insert button. Notice here, when I click the special character, it is not in a clickable state. To make the special characters clickable, I add the created event of the dialog component with the event handler dialog create. Within this event handler, I define a variable, dialog content, and get the element using the getElementById method. I also create an instance to the current object using the variable proxy. I bind the onClick event for the dialog content to make the selected character clickable. Within the click event, I define a variable target and assign the currently selected item. On the other hand, I obtain the currently active item by obtaining the elements that have character block and eActive classes. Now, to make the selected character clickable and active, I check if the selected character element contains the class character block. If so, I will add the class eActive. When I select some other character in the dialog, I need to remove the active state of the previously selected item. For that, I will check the item that contains character block and eActive, and remove the eActive class from it. Look now, when I select any special character, it is clickable and selected. Next, I will show you how to insert the selected character in the Rich Text Editor and close the dialog. To do that, I add the click event for the insert button with the event handler onInsert. Within this method, onInsert, I need to get the active element in the dialog component using the query selector method. If the active element is not null, I create a text node with the active element's text content using the execute command method. After clicking the insert button in the dialog, I need to close the dialog component. I call the public method hide to close the dialog. In the Rich Text Editor component, when I click the Omega command, the dialog opens and displays the special character lists. And here you can choose the character you want to insert in the Rich Text Editor. In this video, you have seen how to add custom tools to a Syncfusion Vue Rich Text Editor toolbar. If you would like to see the working example, you can download it from the GitHub link shared in the description part below. You can also check if you qualify for our community license, giving you a free license key for our entire Vue suite. If you found this video useful, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.